Kanata was an ugly, useless loser who was hated by everyone for being a traitor. However, everything changes when he teams up with 3 useless girls and trains them to save the world. While fighting off a swarm of devil beetles, Yuri was almost iced, but Kanata saved her just in time. Chloe had fired a long Rongde attack, which took out most of the beetle, but a new wave arrived, and before she could take another shot, a beetle tried to attack her. Kanata charged at the insect and took it down before ordering her to retreat with Lloyd and Yuri. As they flew off, Kanata charged at the beetles, taking most of them out until a bigger one appeared and shot a beam at him. 6 months later, Chloe was in the office of the Sky Wizards division leader, giving her an update on the members of the fire team E601. The first was Nico, a delusional airheaded girl, who believed she was the reincarnation of a goddess, and as such deemed it pointless to participate in a training exercise and schoolwork. Next was Lekti, a shy, kind-hearted girl, whose dream is to become a Sky Wizard to protect those who are weak. The last was Misora, the leader of the fire team E601, who was currently on a 124 losing streak. After giving the report, Frian pointed out that the girls were the weakest team and asked Chloe to find an instructor to train them. Chloe asked if she could recommend anyone, and Frian assured her that she would approve as long as the person could handle the class of rejects. Meanwhile, Kanata was at the warehouse when Lloyd came to find him and asked what he was doing there. Kanata threw his clipboard at him and jumped down from the platform he was standing on before explaining that he was comparing the inventory in the warehouse with what was on the list, because the food list wasn't matching up. Lloyd then told him that he discovered some Machina Division members were stealing the food, so he beat the shit out of them. Lloyd asked how long he'd been holed up in the warehouse, and he said he'd been there the entire night, which surprised him. Kanata then asked why he had come, so he told him that the Sky Wizards division leader wanted to see him during lunchtime. Immediately, Kanata left and made his way to the school's main campus. When he reached the campus, he accidentally bumped into Misora, and she fell on him, while he ended up cupping her plots, trying to steady her. Misora scolded him for not looking where he was going but misunderstood him when she noticed where his hands were. She screamed and Kanata apologized.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
Causing her to argue that flat plots mattered. When she got off him, she discovered that her toast had fallen jam-side on his crotch, so she demanded he pay her back for ruining her breakfast. Kanata pointed out that she was the one who was meant to apologize for leaving a stain on his trousers, but she started complaining about how he was going to make her late for practice. Kanata then stood up, after which the toast fell off, leaving only a wet spot on his pants, and when Miss Orr noticed this, she screamed for help as she called him a sleazeball. However, when she turned around, she realized that he had vanished, just like the Avatar did 100 years ago. Kanata, on the other hand, went to wash the jam stain off his pants, and while doing that, he noticed Rico admiring her reflection in a nearby window. Rico soon sensed his presence and asked if he was watching her, because he was mesmerized by her beauty.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
However, Kanata told her he was more concerned with her loony behavior, but the Queen of Delusion said he was an obsessed fan and a stalker. Kanata couldn't believe the girl and asked if she'd forgotten to take her pills, but Rico ignored his insult and approached him, saying a mere mortal like him couldn't understand her ways because they were divine, as she was a reincarnation of a goddess. She also told him not to stare too hard or he'd fall in love, which would be unwise because she was the only person allowed to fall for her beauty. So Kanata told her to stop deluding herself and focus her energy on her wizard training. But Rico said she couldn't be bothered with such stressful activities. Just then, she took note of his half-naked state, so she moved away, saying that even though he was attracted to her, he didn't have to take off his pants. He told her that his pants were already off before he even noticed her. So Rico asked if he wasn't ashamed of showing off his mini sausage before she began screaming for help, saying a disgusting lecher was trying to get dirty with her. Once again, Kanata pulled a disappearing act, but this time he ended up in the bathroom, and when he tried to leave, he met a red-faced Lekti, who awkwardly pointed out that he was in the girls' bathroom.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
Kanata ended up wearing his wet pants and went on his way as he scolded himself for taking a shortcut instead of going the right way. As he walked through the school, the students whispered amongst themselves, asking why the traitor had bothered to show up in the school. When he got to the staircase, he met Yuri, who pointed out that he was late, so he told her that he encountered some problems on the way. Yuri didn't seem to believe him and said a traitor would say anything to get out of trouble, making Kanata ask if she was still holding a grudge against him. She told him she didn't, but he kept insisting, which made her mad, and just as she started arguing with him, Chloe joined them and asked her to ignore Kanata. When she walked away, Chloe asked Kanata why he liked teasing Yuri, so he explained that Yuri joined their team to be close to him. But because of everything that happened, she was hurt. And since she wasn't the type to express her feelings, making her angry was the only way to let her vent her anger. He also pointed out that it had been 6 months since the incident, but Yuri was still angry with him. So Chloe begged him to understand that when everything happened, Yuri was unconscious, which was why she didn't know what happened. She then admitted that she felt sorry about the events that took place that day, so she was going to make it up to him. But Kanata said she sounded like she was going to rope him into some shady business. Later that day, Chloe took him to Frien's office, and although she wasn't pleased to see him, she handed him a document. After reading it, Kanata asked why she was making him an instructor, so Chloe explained that the other instructors were fully booked for the semester. He tried to refuse, but she insisted that it would be a good thing for him, so he agreed and picked up the tablet to read the girls' files. Meanwhile, in the Team E601 classroom, Miss Orr and Rico were arguing because Rico refused to join them for training when Miss Orr noticed Lekti trying to say something. She asked Lekti what she wanted to say, and Lekti told her that she had met a degenerate creep in the bathroom that morning. Rico and Miss Orr said they'd also met one, and just as the two were about to start another argument, Kanata walked into the classroom and introduced himself as their new instructor. However, after hearing his name, Miss Orr recognized him as the traitor but also as the cultured crotch guy, which the others agreed with, so they activated their rings and summoned their weapons. Miss Orr then demanded to know how a dirty scumbag like him became their instructor, saying that she was sure he was only going to slack off and wouldn't bother himself with their performance. Kanata told her to shut up and said that he already knew everything he needed to know about them. He said she had a D in her exams and an F in practical training, but Mysore argued that her abilities couldn't be measured by exams. He then turned to Rico and said that although her classroom grades were good, she got an A- because she refused to do assignments. He also asked how her practical training grade was an F-, and Rico told him that she could not get her hair done in time, so she skipped the training. Finally, he told Lekti that her practical grade was uncertain and her classroom grades were so low that she was competing with Mizora for the dumbest in the school. After that, he tried to go on with the class, but Mizora got up and said there was no way she'd allow a Dan traitor to be their instructor. Lekti then asked why she kept calling him a traitor, so she explained that after he fought some devil beetles alone, he managed to return alive, but since then, he'd become a coward. She said he skipped his special missions, and Rico added that he skipped an important rank match that was supposed to get his team into the S rank. Misora further explained that his constant betrayal of the expectations of others got him the nickname, Traitor. This was why they couldn't allow an irresponsible man to become their instructor. But Kanata told her that if she had a problem with it, she should take it up with the Sky Wizards division leader. After which he pointed out that they had never won a single ranking match, and asked if she wasn't ashamed of herself. Mysore admitted that she was, which was why she was working hard to become a Sky Wizard, while Rico said she was adequately skilled already, and Lekti said she never skipped her training. Kanta then reminded them that he was once called the Black Master Swordsman, so they should be happy that they got to learn from him, and said if he trained them, they could one day become stronger than him. Seeing that he got their attention, he told them to imagine themselves defeating high-ranked teams and fighting against the Devil Beetles. They did, so after he asked if they were still going to kick him out, Mizora told him they could work with him for the time being, but Rika refused. She said that a goddess like her was not meant to toil and sweat, and Mizora told her that her attitude was the reason she wasn't getting good results. Which didn't seem to bother Rico, as she told Mizora that she and Lekti were the ones with poor grades. Mizora got angry and said they should take the matter outside, so the feather-brained Rico put one foot outside, saying she was outside, which only enraged Mizora more. Kanata decided to speak up then and told Rico that since he'd never seen her in action, he would have to believe the grades she was given. This only meant that in terms of skill, she was either on the same level as Nisora or lower, and that says a lot, given that Mysora was the lowest of the low. Rico asked why he'd place her beneath a good-for-nothing failure like Misora, so he asked her to prove she was better by participating in their training. Rico took the bait and agreed but warned him not to let her divine performance make him fall in love with her. He then asked Lekti if she would join the train, but she was too nervous to speak properly. Messer had to remind her to look Kanata in the eyes and speak loudly, which made her apologize and bang her head against the table. Kanata thought she was refusing to train with them, but she explained that she was apologizing to Misora. Misora then pulled her closer to him, and Lekti shyly asked him to train her. Meanwhile, Chloe and Yuri were having drinks at a cafe when Yuri asked about Kanata. Chloe pointed out that she had asked about Kanata 6 times that week, but told her he was now an instructor for an E-ranked fire team. Yuri asked why he was doing that when he refused to move a muscle to help his team, but Chloe told her to try and understand him. Later that day, Kanata took the girl to train in the sky, and Mysore asked why he was using a board to fly instead of using flag magic. Kanata told her that he was secretly training for an advanced Quidditch match, which made Rico point out that the board had poor mobility. Hearing this made Misora ask if he didn't deem them worthy opponents since he wasn't even going to fly properly to face them. However, Kanata said it was the only way to give them a chance to go up against him. He then announced that their training for the day was tag, but Mysore complained that tag was for beginners just learning to fly. When the other girls backed her up, he said they could use their arcane alchemical weapons to attack him. He also added that if they'd managed to bring him down, the training would end before zooming off on his board. Mesura immediately went after him, and Lekti followed her, while Rico stayed back, saying it was foolish to go after a target without a proper plan. When Kanata noticed Misora coming after him while she screamed like a banshee, he realized they had 0 teamwork. He checked her stats and saw that her speed and stamina were good, so he taunted her, saying she couldn't catch him alone. Mesura assured him that she would, but he told her he wasn't going to give her a chance. After chasing him unsuccessfully, she summoned her magical cannon sword, Radgrid, and tried to attack him. Kanata avoided them effortlessly and asked why she couldn't take sharper swings, after which he did a surprise maneuver and managed to get away from her. From where he hid, Kanata watched her try to find him but sensed Lekti behind him. When he turned to face her, she attacked him, but when she got closer to him, she got shy and jumped back, making him wonder why she was like that. She attacked him again, and as he blocked her attacks, he realized she wasn't confident in her abilities. Once again, she moved back and started apologizing, but Kanata sensed Rico behind him and moved out of the way just as she shot at him. However, he realized Lekti would be in danger, so he grabbed her and used his knife to cut Rico's bullet. Kanata was impressed by the attack and asked the girls if they had come up with a plan, and Rico told him that, unlike the idiot Misora, Lekti knew her way around a weapon. That evening in their changing room, when the girls were changing, Lekti apologized for not doing her best during their training, but Mysore told her that she wasn't to blame for their failure. Rico commented that for the first time in her life, Misora said something reasonable, which annoyed Misora, but Rico told her not to be jealous of her massive melons. Misora argued that at least her plots were bigger than Lekti's, but Lekti let her know that hers were more like grapes. Misora turned her anger back to Rico, and the two started arguing, but they stopped when Kanata walked in to give them updates on their next lesson, causing the girls to turn their weapons on him. The next day, Kanata informed the girls that they would begin their training, but as usual, Rico wasn't interested, so she left. Kanata then took Lekti to a clothing store and bought her a maid's outfit. Feeling shy in the exposed outfit, she asked what sort of training she could do in a maid's outfit, so Kanata handed her some flyers and said her job was to pass them out. Lekti went out to try and hand out the flyers, but she was too nervous. So, when a group of boys noticed her and tried to touch her, the flyers fell to the ground. The boys saw them, and Lekti asked them to take one. So when they took it and left, Lekti felt proud of herself for doing her job. Meanwhile, Kanata took Misora to the gates and told her that her mission was to follow Rico so she could discover her weakness. Misora started complaining, so Kanata had to cover her mouth when Rico passed by them. When she was gone, Misora pointed out that he was groping her, and he apologized, saying he wasn't aware of what he was doing, which made her ask if he was saying that because he thought her plots were almost non-existent. Kanata just pointed to Rico, who was leaving, and pushed her in that direction, so she angrily left. As she followed Rico, she tried to be sneaky about it, but Rico noticed her in the window reflection and approached her. She then asked why she was following her, but Misora couldn't come up with an answer, so the self-absorbed airhead assumed she had fallen for her beauty. Rico tried to leave, but Misora begged her to let her come with her, so she agreed. Back at the school, Lekti informed Kanata that she had completed her task, but he told her that her next task was to work part-time in a cafe. Elsewhere, a brown-haired guy was going over a devil beetle data file when he ran into Yuri, who accidentally spilled tea on him. Yuri apologized and tried to wipe off the stain with her handkerchief, but as he watched her, the guy seemed to fall in love. When Chloe called out to her, She offered to have his clothes dry cleaned, but he assured her that everything was fine. At the mall, Misora discovered that Rico had a passion for reading philosophy books, and also learned that she had an obsession with cute stuffed animals. When she mentioned that Rico didn't look like the type of girl who liked things like that, Rico took her shopping bags from her and left in a hurry. Back at the cafe, Lexi was overwhelmed by having to talk to customers, so she ran off to hide at the back of the building. Misora found her there and tried to encourage her by dressing up as a bunny and working at the cafe. Lloyd, who was also at the cafe, noticed Lexi's behavior and asked if she had difficulties speaking with people. He then told her that if she found something difficult, in a sense, it was the same as her weakness, so he advised her to trust her instructor and follow the example of her friend. When she looked over at Misora, she gained a little confidence and managed to face the task at hand. At the end of the day, the girls reported to Kanata, and Lexi asked if he was aware that she had social anxiety. He explained that when they played tag, he noticed she had skills, but didn't have the confidence to put up a real fight. He then told her that if she wanted to become a real sky wizard, she had to overcome her fear, but Lexi told him that she didn't think she could do it. So Kanata assured her that she could, and as her instructor he would gladly help her do so. He said it was normal to feel anxious and make mistakes, but the best thing to do was to learn from the mistakes and perfect things. He then asked Misora how her training went, and she said that she hadn't found anything useful during her time with Rico. While she was speaking, Kanata went and got them ice cream, so when he returned, Misora continued with her explanation. She admitted that she was an incompetent leader because she knew nothing about her teammates, but Kanata pointed out that thanks to the mission he gave her, she managed to learn something about them. He told her that now that she knew what her shortcomings were, she could work on them and better herself. The next day in class, Kanata informed Misora that he was changing her weapon from her cannon sword to a spear because she was wasting her talents trying to master the sword. Misora told him that she wasn't going to change her weapon, and said she was a fool for thinking he was a good instructor before running out of the class. Sometime in the past, during a battle between the Sky Wizards and the Devil Beetles, a red-haired woman with a striking resemblance to Misora fought off the beetles. She also had Misora's sword, Radgrid, which she used to produce a strike blast that destroyed the entire fleet of beetles. Her victory was shown to a cheering crowd, and a younger Misora, who referred to the woman as Mother. Back in the present, Misora was at the graveyard, and as she stood by her mother's grave, she remembered what Kanata had told her about changing her weapon, making her more determined not to give up and prove Kanata wrong. Meanwhile, Lexi went to deliver a drink order as she continued her training, and when the door opened, it was Lloyd. She remembered him from her first day at the cafe, and he told her that he was glad she was improving herself. When she left, he took the drinks to Chloe and Frian, who asked why Lloyd was still making Lexi work as part of her training. Outside the office, Lexi saw Rico and asked if she'd like to train with her, but she refused, saying it was beneath her status. Lexi apologized for bothering her and said she was worried because Misora hadn't been to school for a few days. When she mentioned that she could only rely on Kanata to help her, Rico asked why she trusted him. Lexi explained that although everyone called him a traitor, he was very helpful and kind. On the school grounds elsewhere, the guy Yuri had accidentally spilled tea on, sat on a bench rehearsing how to speak to Yuri when he returned her handkerchief. However, when he got up to go find her, he saw her speaking with Kanata, who told her to stop following him around like a lost puppy. Yuri told him she only wanted to know why he hadn't reserved the practice airspace for the E-600 and one-team training. Kanata told her to stop being nosy, but she said she happened to find out because she was in charge of the bookings. He then told her he had other things to take care of before bidding her farewell, leaving her standing alone. After watching their interaction, the girl looked like he'd licked a sour lemon and threw the handkerchief on the bench in annoyance. Later in the day, Kanata arrived at a restaurant, and when he went inside, the owner welcomed him, but Misora, who was also there, told him to get lost. The owner, who turned out to be her father, told her not to speak rudely to his customer, but she got mad and left. Kanata was surprised to find out they were related, so when he mentioned that they looked nothing alike, her father said she looked like her mom, after which he told him that she was dead. After he served Kanata steak, he told him he had heard his late wife liked steak. Kanata asked if he was a natural, and he said that he was, but said his wife was a sky wizard. He also said he had no memories of her even though there were records of her, which put a strain on his relationship with Misora. He then asked Kanata if he knew why Misora was skipping school, but instead of answering him, Kanata asked why Misora was obsessed with the magic cannon sword. His question made her father realize he wasn't an ordinary acquaintance, so he asked who he was. Kanata told him that he was her instructor, so any information he had about the sword would be helpful to him. Misora's father explained that he was told that his wife was a great magic cannon swordsman in the floating city they used to live in. One day she went on a mission which she never returned from, and from that day on, the Naturals lost their memories of her. However, Misora remembered her and decided to pursue the magic cannon sword arts because she didn't want to forget her mother. In a flashback, Sosi, Misora's mother, had just returned from a mission, and Misora was very excited to see her. Sosi picked her up and threw her in the air like a rag doll, after which she began flirting with her husband, forgetting that her daughter was still in the air until she landed in her father's arms. The next morning, she gave Misora steak for breakfast and convinced her to eat it even though she didn't want to. Later that day, Misora noticed water flooding the house and found her clumsy mother beside the washing machine. Misora asked what went wrong, and her mother told her she'd put in too much water. Sometime later, Sosi blew a hole in the wall because she was trying to dry up some water, and just as Misora scolded her for being reckless, she got called for a mission. Misora wanted to protest, but her father spoke to her, so she wished her mother good luck. Days later, Sosi returned and took Misora to show her what their city looked like from the air. While they flew around, Sosi told her daughter that she was fighting to protect everyone in the city, including her and her father, which Misora thought was very cool, but their flight was interrupted by 2 aerial police, who ordered Sosi to stop. That was when Misora realized that her mother didn't have permission to be flying about. Sosi told her to hold on as she flew faster to get away from the cops, and later admitted that she forgot to get flight clearance. Some days later, she bid her husband and daughter farewell as she was going on another mission, but promised to be back in time for dinner. The evening soon came, so Misora stopped her swordplay and went to ask her father what time her mother would be back. However, her father had no idea who she was talking about and told her she didn't have a mother. Misora couldn't understand why her father said that, so she ran out of the house and went to ask her neighbors if they knew her mother. But just like her father, none of them knew who Skoi was. When Misora returned home, she met some sky wizards who had come to return her mother's sword. They told her that Sosi had died protecting them, making Misora remember her mother telling her that she fought to protect people. Misora told the sword and declared that she would become a sky wizard like her mother. Back in the present, Kanata found Misora where she had gone to train and took her to her mother's grave. He then told her to vow before her mother that she would stop using the cannon sword because she would never be strong enough to wield it, but Misora refused. She summoned the sword and said that the day she received it, she inherited her mother's will, which was not something a traitor would understand. Kanata then asked if her mother's goal was to protect people or wield the sword, causing her to stop and think. He explained that her refusal to give up the sword would only lead to her dying recklessly, but Misora argued that she wanted to make people remember her mother. Kanata pointed out that Naturals never remembered sky wizards who had died, and Misora told him that by becoming the best cannon sword wielder, she would make them remember. Kanata laughed and called her crazy, but said those were the kind of girls he was into, and said he'd give her a hint on how to wield the sword better. He then told her to vow before her mother that she would become the best swordsman, who was strong enough to protect everyone. The next day, she returned to school and apologized to Lekti for making her worried, and Kanata informed them that the next part of their training involved them serving coffee in their swimsuits, making Lekti fly off in anger. Before Misora went after her, she thanked Kanata for coming to help her. Meanwhile, Riko, who they hadn't noticed watching them, told herself that Kanata was starting to get interesting. Some days later, Riko was woken up by her sister, who called her a lazy bum for sleeping in on a school day. After she left, Riko went to take a shower, but got distracted by the sight of her own body in the mirror. Later that day, Kanata was having lunch with Lloyd when Yuri approached them, asking how Kanata was able to stand being the most hated person in the entire city. Kanata ignored the petty brat and pointed to the data files on the table as he explained to Lloyd that they were the team going against his team in their next rank match. Yuri complained about being ignored by them and told him that his teaching methods were useless. She also said his team was already weak, and with him being their instructor, there was no way they would win the match. Kanata told her that it was good because they wouldn't feel the extra pressure of having to win. Yuri was surprised by his words, so she asked why he would say such a thing about his team, saying he was the worst kind of instructor. Kanata explained that he wasn't worried because he knew they had a better chance of winning now. His words made her remember the last time she fought alongside him, which made her blush, but she told him she hoped he wasn't just bragging about their skills and left, so Lloyd went after her. Just then, Rico arrived and began telling him about the irresistible beauty she saw while taking a bath that morning. Her obvious delusion made Kanata laugh, which only reminded her of the way people laughed at her as a child. She then noticed the data file on the table and asked why he had them. So Kanata explained that they were their opponents in their next match. He told her they would have a fighting chance if Lecty and Mesora managed to complete their training. So Rico made it a point to remind him that she didn't need training. Kanata didn't try to convince her to train and told her to do as she saw fit, which surprised her. Meanwhile, Mesora and Lecty were in the changing room, putting relief patches on their backs after their training. Lecty mentioned that their training was becoming harder, so Mesora told her that it was only improving their skills. She said improving their skills would increase their chances of winning her next match. Just then, Kanata knocked on the door, startling them so much that Mesora called him a peeping Tom, but Kanata assured them that he was interested in undeveloped Lolas. He told them he wanted to take them out to get ice cream as a reward for working hard, but Mesora declined his offer, saying they had other plans. Lecty tried to argue, but Mesora told her they needed to focus on their training so they could win the match. Later on, they met with Rico in their classroom and tried to convince her to join their training sessions before the match. Rico told them that she wasn't interested in training with them because as a naturally skilled goddess, she would gain nothing from it. Lecty tried to let her understand that she could learn more from Kanata, and Mesora backed her up, saying following Kanata's instructions would make them stronger. This made Rico remember the first time Lecty tried to convince her to train and her conversation with Kanata earlier that day. Still, she refused and said a mere mortal like Kanata wasn't worthy of training her, so Mesora asked her to only participate in the match since she wasn't interested in training. However, Rico told her she had no plans of taking part in a match they were bound to lose. Seeing no other way to convince the self-righteous diva, Mesora got on her knees and tried to beg her. But Kanata arrived at that moment and lifted her back up. Meanwhile, in Frien's office, she informed Chloe that a deranked fire team was downed while on patrol the night before. Chloe had asked if a chimera had appeared, and Frien confirmed it before saying the chimeras were the commanders of the smaller beetles. She said they couldn't afford to let the beetles get closer to Mistogan, but Chloe assured her that she and the special duty fire team would take care of it. Frien then asked how the E601 training was coming along because they had a ranked match coming up. Chloe laughed and pointed out that she had been asking about the team a lot, but Frien said it was just a coincidence. Back in the E601 classroom, Kanata dropped Mesora on her butt and told Rico was right about them losing the match, but said whining about it like a child was worse. He then placed his hand on Mesora's head and told her that he would give her the key to victory. The next day, Rico awoke from a dream where she was chasing after her sister, who was surrounded by people. On her way to class, she came across Rio, who was watching Yuri train like a creep, but seeing as Rico's brain was filled with nothing but sand, she assumed he was there to stalk her. Her rival spooked the love-struck fool, so he immediately ran off, leaving Rico to dwell in her delusion. Meanwhile, Kanata was training with Mesora and summoned his sword Bladius to show her a new move. He shot a supercharged beam, which he called the magic cannon sword battle art, strike blaster at a cloud. He then told her she had to learn it and began showing her the right way to position her body to take the shot. He straight up told her that her sword and shooting skills were shit, but since they were short on time, she had to try her best to learn it. Mesora asked if that was the only chance they had to win, so he explained that her most powerful asset was her magic power capacity, which she would use to power the one-shot, one-kill attack. Mesora made the shot but suddenly felt weak because the magic power load was too heavy. She then turned to ask how he managed to maintain his composure when she was already weak from taking one shot, but noticed that he was not as unaffected as she thought. Kanata told her that he was going to add the move to her regular cannon training, but said she was only allowed to take 3 shots per day. Mesora said nothing because she was busy thinking about how using the cannon blaster exhausted him, even though he was 10 times stronger than she was. He then touched her head and told her to perfect the move so her team could win, but she ignored his words and asked him to take his hand off her head because it wasn't an armrest. Kanata teased her, saying that was the best place to keep his hand because she was so down to earth. However, they didn't notice Rico watching them train, and she told herself that Mesora had improved, but wondered why she and Kanata were shamelessly flirting with each other. Kanata then moved on to spar with Lecty. However, he noticed she wasn't concentrating and asked what the matter was. Lecty shyly asked if he was going to teach her a new move as he had done with Mesora, but he said she didn't need a special move because she already used the Eisenet-style magic twin sword art created by her ancestor. He asked her to remember the training she went through to be able to perfect the technique and told her to come after him again. Letty charged at him with full force, but Kanata matched her strikes with his own. When they stopped fighting, Letty felt sad because she was not able to land a hit on Kanata, but he assured her that she had improved a lot. Riko, who was still watching, wondered if she would also improve if she allowed Kanata to train her. She soon sensed Kanata behind her, so she turned to face him but took off her glasses when she remembered she had them on. Kanata asked if she wore them to activate her clairvoyance, and she confirmed it, but asked how he knew what she needed them for. He explained that from where she stood, it would be difficult for her to see them clearly, so it made sense that she was using the highest-ranking detection skill to watch them. Riko then asked if the move he taught Mesora was the so-called key to victory he spoke about. When he said yes, she agreed that if Mesora mastered it, she could become unstoppable. However, she believed it was useless because the move's long charge-up time was the perfect opportunity for an enemy to strike. Riko told him that to use that move, one would require a skilled vanguard and a rear guard to protect them. Kanata agreed with her but said her abilities were more valuable, which confused her because he just told her that Mesora was their key to victory, and now he was telling her that she was more valuable. So he explained that all three of them were the keys to their team's victory, making her ask why he never forced her to train like the others. Kanata admitted that he did that to allow Letty and Mesora to catch up to her level. He then moved closer to her, and like the ultimate Riz Lord, and told her that he wanted her, which made her ask if he was high on crack. Kanata simply told her that he could keep training them and coming up with strategies, but if they didn't have the will the will to fight, they would lose, and proceeded to ask her to decide between staying in Loser Town and moving to Wintersville. On the next training day, while Mesora and Letty were flying to the aerial training space, Mesora pointed out that Riko was absent again, but just as Letty asked if she would skip their upcoming match, Riko called out to them. Letty was excited to see her and flew faster, while Mesora scolded her for not telling them she was coming. Days later, an air raid alert was issued to all of Mistoken because of an incoming wave of devil beetles. From the control room, Freyan ordered the A-rank fire teams to engage the bugs and act as the city's defense, while she ordered the E-rank teams to help with the evacuation. The 601 team was one of the teams assigned to help with evacuation, but when Riko and Mesora met with Kanata, Riko asked why he was not at the front lines fighting. Kanata told her it was complicated, and when Mesora realized that things were about to go south, she asked where Letty was. The next moment, Letty came flying towards them with a little girl and a cat in her arms. Mesora said they had to take her to the shelter, but Kanata told them to wait because he noticed some devil beetles approaching. Meanwhile, Chloe and Yuri were fighting the beetles, when Lloyd came to inform them that some beetles made it past their defenses and had broken into Mistogen. Inside the command room, Freyan ordered all teams to prepare for combat and stop the bugs that broke in. Outside, as the bugs approached, Mesora summoned her cannon sword and used her strike blaster to take out most of them, but ended up destroying some parts of the city. Her teammates called her a dim-witted idiot for releasing such a powerful blast inside the city, and Kanata let her know that she destroyed her father's restaurant. After that, they returned the girl to her mother, but Kanata heard a low rumble that made him worried. Back in the control room, Freyan was informed that a Chimera Deneb had appeared in Block 24, so she ordered all intercepting units to concentrate their firepower on it to take it down. The units did as they were ordered and took down the Chimera, but just as Freyan ordered them to set up a perimeter, she was told that the bug's pattern hadn't changed. Meanwhile, Kanata told the girls that there was more than one Chimera, so Riko asked if the only way to stop the raid was to find the second Chimera, which he confirmed. She then put on her glasses to activate her clairvoyance, after which she told them that there was a high concentration of small beetles in Block 68. Outside Mistoken, Yuri suggested to Chloe and Lloyd that they return to the city to fight the Chimera, but Chloe told her that Kanata could handle it on his own. Yuri argued that Kanata was a shameless coward and would be the first person to tuck tail and run, but Chloe told her to give him the benefit of the doubt. Back in Mistoken, Kanata told the girls that they would be the ones to take down the Chimera. Mesora asked if he planned to get rid of them, as she pointed out that it was their first real battle. Kanata told them he didn't train them to be weak bitches, who would die easily, and said that he trained them to survive and protect others. He assured them that they could take out the Chimera with their skills, because he believed in them. Lekti agreed, saying they could save lives while Riko was more concerned with showing her sister that she was superior. As she approached the bugs, Kanata ordered Lekti to draw the Archanar's attention by engaging them in close combat. Next, he ordered Riko to use long Ronge sniping attacks to cover Mysora, while she fired the strike blast. However, the bugs kept coming, so Lekti and Riko held until Mysora recharged and fired a bigger blast, taking out the bugs. Their celebration was short-lived when Kanata drew Mysora's attention to the Chimera, which fired a powerful blast at her. Mysora froze like a deer caught in the headlights, unable to move, but Kanata managed to save her by acting like a literal meat shield and injured his hand. While the Chimera rose from the ashes of its comrades like a phoenix and began firing at them. It shots at the buildings surrounding Riko and Lekti, causing the rubble to fall on them. When Kanata and Mysora went to check on them, Mysora told Kanata not to stress himself out because she noticed his magic reserves were low. Kanata says that he is their only chance at defeating the Chimera before summoning Gladius. As he get a rip off of a Super Saiyan charge, Lekti noticed he wasn't using normal magic, and before she could say anything he told her to stand back because it was dangerous and flew off. He charged at the Chimera, dodging all its blasts and managed to use his sword to slash the center of its forehead. However, it quickly recharges and fires another blast, but it's countered by a blast from Kanata, which ends up taking out the Chimera. With the Chimera defeated, the smaller beetles retreated, which surprised Yuri. So Kloa told her that it was Kanata who was responsible for it, but she found it hard to believe. Inside the command room, Frian tried to figure out who defeated the Chimera, while somewhere else in the city, Real, who for some reason decided to go look for Yuri, found a shard from the Chimera Kanata killed. Meanwhile, Riko and Lekti came out from under the rubble, and together with Mysora, they rushed to save Kanata, who was falling to his doom. When he opened his eyes, he praised them for their performance and said they were ready for their match. On the day of the match, Yuri asked Kanata how he got injured, and he told her that he had tripped while looking for a place to hide. The match soon started but ended with the girls losing, which made Yuri laugh at an embarrassed Kanata. Meanwhile, Frian was in the head supervisor's office, where she presented a proposal which the supervisor approved. When Frian came out of the office, she told Chloe that they would hold an academy tournament. Days later, the girls had another training session, but they were as uncoordinated as the Teen Titans, with Mysora firing shot after shot and missing, Riko admiring herself in a mirror, and Lekti scared of balloon beetles, while Kanata sat there being as useless as Zeus. Meanwhile, in Frian's office, she informed Chloe, Yuri, and Lloyd that the E601 team were still the same weak-ass team they were before she appointed Kanata as an instructor. She also told them that Kanata was insisting that his team defeat the Chimera, and even dared to ask her to let them off the hook for destroying civilian property, which she refused. She said she would relieve Kanata of his duties as well as disband the team to punish them, and Yuri agreed with her, saying that a traitor like Kanata wasn't fit to be an instructor. So Frian ordered Chloe to bring Kanata to her office later in the day. Lloyd then asked if that was the only reason she had summoned them, and Frian told him that it wasn't before handing them a flyer for the tournament. Later on in class, the girls complained about no one recognizing their efforts during the raid, and Kanata pointed out that nobody saw them fight. Mysora tried to argue that his injury was proof of the battle, but he covered her mouth with his hand and asked if she was satisfied. Before she could answer, Riko threw the question back at him, and he said he didn't care before showing them a flyer for the Mistoken tournament. Lekti said they didn't stand a chance because they weren't strong enough, but Mysora said they would try. Just then, Chloe came for Kanata, and in Frian's office, Frian told him he was fired because he was a useless instructor. She told him that disbanding his team was the best because they seemed unmotivated, but Kanata disagreed with her and said he still had more to teach them. Frian told him that even though Chloe recommended him, she still had her doubts about him. Kanata told her to shove her doubts where the sun didn't shine because the only people he needed to prove himself to were his team. He then asked if she'd accept the team if they won the tournament, which made her laugh. She pointed out that all ranked teams except S ranks could participate, and his team who couldn't defeat their fellow E ranks would only be easy prey. So he told her that if they managed to win, she would forget about disbanding them, which she agreed to. However, the girls who were eavesdropping at the door only heard her say disband before Kanata opened the door. On their way to their classroom, they asked Kanata if Frian was going to disband them, but he only told them not to eavesdrop. Later on, Kanata asked the girls what they planned to do after hearing what Frian said, so Misora said they had no choice but to make their team stronger, and the others agreed. Kanata said they only had to win in the tournament, but before leaving he informed them that they begin a new training, and added that the tournament matchup would be done the next day. That night, Frian took Yuri, Chloe, and Lloyd to the facility where they studied devil beetles, and there they met Rio, who showed them the Chimera shard he found as Frian explained that they had named the new Chimera Antares. She also said that aside from being larger than the Chimera Deneb, it also had a regenerative ability, which Rio demonstrated by cutting off a piece that grew back immediately. Rio said it could lead to a breakthrough in the production of rapid regeneration medicine. Frian thanked him before they turned to leave, but Rio mentioned that he watched an interview where Yuri said she was only interested in someone stronger than her. When she confirmed it, he told her that he was glad to have met her, and when they left he brought out her handkerchief and began smelling it like a creep. On their way out, Frian explained that their enemy was evolving, and in their current state, they would run out of manpower, which was why she was holding the tournament. As she spoke, Lloyd noticed Yuri looked pale and asked if she was all right. She said that the smell in the laboratory made her feel dizzy. Outside the building, Frian told Yuri she needed her help with something. The next day, the tournament matchups began, and Team E600 and one was placed against another E-rank team. The girls were glad that they didn't have to go against a high-ranking team in their first match, and while they were speaking with Kanata about it, Yuri called out to him. Kanata asked why she was there, and she told him that she had been assigned to an A-ranked team as their instructor. Kanata told her that their teams would face off in the final match and asked if she was scared of losing. Yuri said that his team didn't stand a chance against hers, so they made a bet that if her team lost, she would join his team. The girls asked why he was sure they would make it to the finals, so he explained that if they won the tournament, Frian would not disband them, which surprised them. One evening, a male student was attacked by a hooded figure, who seemed to glow after he was done beating him. Sometime in the past, Yuri watched a rank match between Kanata's team and an A-ranked team. Just when she thought Kanata should give up, he did an unexpected maneuver, so his opponents fired shots at him, which he dodged. However, a lone arrow headed in the direction where Yuri was standing, so Kanata went to help her. After which he flew off and finished the match, securing his team's victory. After the match, he came back to check on Yuri, and she thanked him for saving her. While they were talking, Lloyd called out to him, so he invited Yuri to join them for their next match. In the present, Yuri, Chloe, and Lloyd were having a meeting concerning the student who was attacked the previous night. But Yuri seemed to be lost in thought until Chloe called her name and told her that their team was to join the Raven's Nest for patrol duty. The next moment, Kanata jumped down from a nearby tree, and Yuri accused him of eavesdropping on their conversation. Kanata told her that he'd been taking a nap on the tree, and asked why she liked picking fights with him, but she argued that she didn't do that, causing everyone to laugh. When she realized he was teasing her, she excused herself, saying she had to check up on her team. After she left, Chloe told Kanata that when Frian asked Yuri to become an instructor, she had requested to be in charge of an E-rank team. Kanata told her he wasn't surprised, because he knew that Yuri always tried her best to do what was right, and said she preferred to be on equal footing with the rest of them. Later that day, during another E601 training session, Rico didn't move a muscle to help the others even though they were having their butts kicked by balloon beetles. As Kanata watched them, he remembered their conversation in their class, where he informed them that he was going to swap their positions, which made Misora start complaining, but Lekti said she thought it was a good idea because Kanata's training always had a positive outcome. Rico also agreed with Lekti, much to Misora's surprise, so she had no choice but to go along with his plan. Back in the present, Rico finally summoned her weapon and told Misora to hold off the enemy on the left flank, while she and Lekti took out the ones on the right. Misora took one look at the balloon beetles and complained that they were too far, but Rico managed to convince her to go by saying Lekti's skills would be useless there. When she flew away, Lekti apologized for having an inadequate skill, so Rico admitted to her that she only said it to make Misora go along with the plan. From where Kanata stood observing the girls, he told himself that Rico's plan was the most effective way to handle the situation. The next moment, Yuri arrived with her team, and while they were doing their training, the girls watched them. When they were done, the girls began feeling insecure because they didn't think they could measure up to Yuri's team. Kanata told them not to lose hope and said that the most important thing was for them to learn to function as a unit. After their training, Kanata helped Rico massage her shoulders and took the chance to praise her for the wisdom she showed during training. He told her that she was the one who cared the most about the others, and Rico was surprised. On his way home that evening, Kanata ran into Yuri, who told him they needed to talk, so he agreed because he also had something to tell her. However, Misora, Lecty, and Riko decided to follow them so they could find out what they were talking about. When Kanata and Yuri got to the mall, they ordered their coffee, and the girls took the table behind them. Misora tried to listen to what the two were talking about while they waited for their drinks, but she couldn't hear them. Riko and Lecty said the two might have been on a date because they were dating, which Misora didn't seem to like. Back at Kanata's table, he asked Yuri why she wanted to speak with him, but she told him to tell her what he had in mind first, so he asked her if what she said in her interview about liking someone stronger than her was true. Yuri confirmed it, so he asked why she was making something like that public knowledge, and she told him to stop sticking his nose in her business. Kanata pointed out that it was now public business and said he knew the person she was referring to in the interview was Chloe. He admitted that he had no idea she swung for the other team, but said that if she wanted to confess her feelings, she didn't have to use the magazine. Yuri stood up in anger and asked if that was the important topic he wanted to discuss with her, so he reminded her that she was the one to approach him for a conversation. Yuri then told him that he should resign as an instructor, saying that although he was a traitor, she knew he had skills. He was wasting them on the E601 fire team because they were a group of hopeless failures. Her words didn't seem to bother him, as he stated that she hated the girls so much, which Yuri didn't deny. She said that the girls didn't belong in their school. Kanata calmly told her that if that were the case, both he and Chloe didn't deserve to be in the school, either because at one point, Chloe wasn't able to fly properly and people called her a failure. This revelation surprised Yuri, as it was the first time she had heard this. So Kanata told her that Misora and the others had enough potential, and as their instructor he could vouch for them. Yuri only got angrier, so she picked up the bill and said she would pay for it on her way out since she was the one who invited him out. Kanata then said he'd pay for the table behind them before giving Misora a thumbs up and explaining to Yuri that the girls had followed them from school. Misora was surprised that he had noticed them, but Riko said it was natural for him, while Lecty was happily munching on her cake. Later that evening, Lloyd and Chloe informed Freon about their findings concerning the recent attacks on students. They told her that all the victims were male Sky Wizard Division students, but Firo said it might be a coincidence that they were all in the same division. Lloyd explained that the first victim was in an E-rank team, while the second was in a D-rank team, and the third was in a C-rank, which made them conclude that the next victim would most likely belong to a B-rank team. That night, another male student tried to get away from the hooded assailant, who kept kicking him until he passed out. When he took off the hood, it was revealed that it was real, and it seemed like he'd become the ultimate simp because he was trying to get stronger so he could be with Yuri. The next day, Lecty woke up early to go jogging, and as she jogged, she met Kanata, who asked if she was out early because she couldn't stand lazy slob Misora. Lecty told him that she didn't mind living with Misora, so he thanked her for putting up with the unbearable brat after she blew up her house. When they stopped to rest, Lecty asked Kanata if their new training method was effective, and explained that she understood he was trying to add variations to their tactics by making them switch roles constantly. However, she believed it was pointless because Misora was useless as a vanguard, and she couldn't do much as the rear guard. Kanata praised her for paying attention, and agreed that Misora wasn't cut out to be a vanguard, but said that wasn't enough reason to stop the training. He then asked if she would like him to give her some hints on how to improve her skills during their training. Much to her dismay, Lecty found herself wearing her maid's outfit again, while Kanata thanked the members of the logistics division for allowing him to trouble them with their training. He then told Lecty to stay sharp because lunchtime was always very hectic, and as if to prove his point, the customers started calling out their orders. Lecty did her best to handle the job, and while she waited for a customer's order, she looked around the restaurant and was amazed by how smoothly everything was going. When the order was ready, another waitress offered to take it to the customer, while Lecty attended to the new customers. Lecty thanked her, and as she made her way to the table, she nearly tripped over another waitress, so she apologized, but the waitress kindly told her to watch her surroundings. Outside the restaurant, she did as the waitress advised and found that things started moving smoothly for her as well. During their training session later, Misora found it difficult to shoot down the targets, so Riko offered her some advice, after which she told her that her clumsiness was the reason she was homeless. Misora argued that she was doing her best, and said that Riko's new position as the middle guard wasn't easy for her either. However, Riko proved her wrong by shooting down a target, so the annoyed Misora started moving about like a headless chicken as she tried to take down more targets. She then started shouting commands at Rico, who didn't like being told what to do, and the two ended up arguing like an old married couple. Lecty, who acted as the rear guard, looked a little worried, so Kanata asked her what was wrong. Lecty admitted that she had no idea that the role of the rear guard was a lonely one, and he explained that it was because they were usually the last line of defense. He told her that if she didn't trust the vanguard and middle guard, she would feel helpless, and she told him that she never knew Rico was under so much pressure. She then remembered how things moved smoothly in the restaurant after she paid attention to her surroundings. So she called out to Misora and Rico and gave them some words of encouragement, which helped to boost their morale. As she watched them, she told herself that since Misora was finally shooting straight, Rico could calmly provide cover fire, while she would take care of any targets that got past them. Just then, some targets flew past Misora, and Lecty took them out, feeling excited that they were finally growing and working as a team. Kanata soon joined her, and as he patted her head, he told her she had passed her training perfectly. Some days later, Kanata ran into Chloe on his way back from jogging, and he was surprised to see the dark shadows under her eyes. He asked why she looked like a possessed soul from the Conjuring movie, and Chloe told him that because they had been doing nightly patrols to catch the hooded assailant, she hadn't gotten enough time to sleep. He then asked if she had any idea who was behind the attacks, but she said the only thing they knew was that he only attacked melee weapon users. After she asked him to keep that piece of information private, Kanata asked if Yuri was also going on night patrols with them. Chloe explained that because she was an instructor, she only patrolled during the day so she had enough time to rest. Before they could speak further, Misora interrupted them and asked Kanata to stop with all the weird training he'd been making them do. She told him to allow them to do something more advanced like the special duty teams, but he told her that they were too inexperienced for that. Misora tried to get him to tell her what the next training would be so she could be ahead of Lecty and Rico, who both seemed to be doing better than her. But Kanata told her that she would find out later before sending her off to school. Chloe told him that he seemed to be enjoying his role as an instructor, which reminded her of the time he spent training Yuri when she first joined their team. Later that day, Kanata took the girls to a crowded, dusty room and told them that until their match, all three of them would be living together. After he left, Misora and Lecty picked up a broom and a mop to start cleaning their new home, but the high and mighty Rico said it was beneath her to do such a thing. She then tried to leave, but Misora wasn't planning to be her servant, so she went after her even though Lecty tried to stop her. Sometime that evening when Yuri was leaving the school, she met Kanata, who gave her a cream puff, but she found the gift suspicious and asked what he wanted. Kanata gave her a stupid excuse about seeing it when he went to get something for the girls, so Yuri said she'd eat it because wasting food was bad. Meanwhile, in a hospital room, Freen and Lloyd stood at the foot of the bed watching the latest victim of Real and concluded that he was going to go after an S-rank Sky Wizard next. Back outside, Kanata and Yuri sat down on a bench, and after Yuri finished her cream puff, he asked if she stopped using her spear because he was the one who had taught her how to use it. Yuri said nothing, which made him realize he was right, so he reminded her that she had a habit of backing away during a fight. He said that it was a bad thing for a swordsman, which was the reason he made her start using a spear, but Yuri argued that she had no problem using a sword. Kanata wasn't surprised by her response because he knew she was as stubborn as a bull and said that it was her stubbornness that got her far. He also reminded her that as long as she never gave up, she would do just fine without him. Yuri stood up from the bench and asked why he was being nice to her, so he told her that it was because she was his precious student. The next moment, they felt a strong breeze, and when they looked in the direction it came from, they saw Real standing there. However, Yuri and Kanata had no idea who he was, but he told Yuri that he'd been dying to meet her. Kanata teased Yuri for being friends with such a shady person, and she told him she had no idea who the person was. She then summoned her weapon and charged at Real, but he was too fast for her to keep up with. When she managed to disarm him, Real used wind slashes against her repeatedly until she was bruised all over. Tired of watching from the sidelines, Kanata stepped in, but the crazed Real got angry because he believes Kanata is standing between him and his love, so he uses his wind slashes against him. Kanata deflected each one, so Real tried to attack him by moving around like the Flash, but when he tried to strike, Kanata blocked the attack. He then slashed Real's arm and told him that although he had speed, he could never measure up to the Sky Wizards, who put their lives on the line to hone their skills. Real got angry, but when his arm started throbbing, he told Kanata that they would face off against each other again. When he tried to escape, Yuri tried to stop him, but only managed to slash his shirt, so he came back to tell her that he'd be back with more love and punched her in the stomach. At the lab, Real swore to take revenge on Kanata for getting in his way, but suddenly started hearing the voice of the Chimera telling him to use it as his revenge tool. Real held onto his head as he started wondering if he was losing his mind because of the voice he was hearing. Later on, Kanata made it to the girl's new room with an injured and unconscious Yuri, but the girls seemed to think he had something to do with her injuries. As Yuri lay asleep on one of the beds, Misora demanded to know why Kanata had brought her to their room. Riko, who is still delusionally stupid, asked if he'd kidnap Yuri to eliminate her as she was the instructor of their rival team. Kanton had to explain that he couldn't take Yuri to his place because it would cause a misunderstanding, so he had brought her to their room instead. At that moment, Yuri woke up and immediately sat upright, asking Kanata where the assailant was. However, she didn't realize she was naked and flashing everyone in the room her mid-sized plots until the girls screamed and Misora covered Kanata's eyes. Immediately, she pulled out a gun from under the pillow and told Kanata she was going to end his miserable existence, after which she would send herself to the afterlife. Kanata was surprised to see the gun and asked the girls why they had such a weapon lying about. Riko told him that she needed it for protection since she was now living with Misora, who she deemed a stalker. Misora argued that she would rather drink seawater than be obsessed with someone like Riko. Kanata then took the gun away from Yuri and explained that the girls had been the ones to undress her, because her clothes were torn badly. Yuri was still ashamed that she'd flashed them her bits, so she shyly asked Kanata if he'd seen them, but he looked away, confirming her question. Yuri started sobbing, making Kanata run away with the excuse that he needed some air. When they were alone, Riko thanked Yuri for saving Kanata from the assailant, because that was the lie he'd told them, and Lekti gave her a dress to wear. When she was dressed, she asked the girls if they were living together, and they told her that Kanata had ordered them to do so as part of their training. Yuri told them that Kanata also used to make her do strange things when he was her tutor. Lekti asked what kind of things she did, but Yuri got shy and said she'd rather not say. So Riko outright asked her if she and Kanata were in a relationship, which she immediately denied, and Kanata chose that moment to interrupt them. Riko asked why he'd suddenly run off, so he explained that he had gone to get something he dropped during the fight. He then tossed a cow keychain at Yuri and told her it was a good luck charm he got from the cream puff vendor. Yuri asked why he'd gone out of his way to retrieve a stupid keychain, so he told her it was because he cared about her. Their sappy emotional moment was cut short by Misora, who asked Kanata how living together with Riko and Lekti was supposed to make them stronger. Kanata tried to say he'd mentioned it before, but she cut him off, saying he hadn't. He then laughed and started teasing her by rubbing her head, causing Yuri to remember the time he spent on her team. Suddenly, she turned to leave, so Kanata asked if she was okay, and Yuri told him she was, after which she thanked them for helping her, but warned them that she wasn't going to go easy on them in the tournament. She also told them that if they made it to the finals, she would ensure that it would be the end of their team. After she left, the girls sat down together, and Lekti asked if their team would be disbanded if they lost the tournament. Misora said there was no way in hell she would let that happen, and Riko asked for food. Lekti offered to cook, and when they sat down to eat, Riko told them that she had a secret ingredient to improve the taste of the food and added some sauce to Misora's plate. When Lekti tasted it, she said it was delicious, which only made Riko brag more about the other things she could add to enhance the meal. As the two of them spoke about the food, Misora couldn't help but wonder if she was the only Sakura in the room. The next day, they had to carry a sleeping Riko to training, and when they got back, Misora tried helping Lekti cook, but ended up cutting her finger. She then went to sit with Riko and used the chance to learn some battle strategies from her, but it appeared that she was too dumb to understand anything Riko was saying. The day of the tournament opening soon arrived, and after Frian gave her speech, the teams were told that whichever team lost their leader would be eliminated. When they left the arena, Kanata told the girls to rest up for their match the next day and left them. Riko and Lekti talked to themselves excitedly, but Misora flips out on them, saying that they might lose their match if they do not get serious. Later that night, Misora was trying to come up with battle formations but wasn't getting anywhere. Riko took notice of this, so she outright told her that she didn't have the brain capacity to come up with a proper plan and advised her to rest instead. Before Misora could argue, Lekti came to inform them that there was no hot water, so they went to see what the problem was. Riko discovered the energy generator engine was bad, but Mysora said she could fix it because they had the same model at home. However, she used her magic to force start it and ended up frying the engine, but Rika mentioned it would be able to heat enough water for one bath. Lekti then suggested they all took a bath together since there was no other way to get hot water. While they bathed, Lekti and Rico talked about how living together hadn't been as bad as they thought it would be. Mysora, on the other hand, didn't seem to share the same sentiments with them because she lashed at them. She then said they were feeling relaxed because they had passed Kanata's tests and like her. Going further, she told them she was sure they didn't care if they lost the match before she walked into the shower and scolded herself for saying such mean things to them. On the day of their match, no one came to watch them, but Kanata asked Mysora if she liked living with her teammates. Mysora told him it was pointless and said it only made her realize how useless she was compared to the rest. Kanata just advised her to be calm and take in the things around her. Before the match began, Frian said the defeat of the E600 and one team would allow her to get rid of them. But Lloyd reminded her that Kanata tended to show his true colors when he was cornered, so it would be unwise to underestimate him. When the match began, Mysora foolishly charged at the opposing team without thinking, allowing them to dodge her attacks and almost knock her down. Luckily, Lekti and Rico intervened. As she watched them battle the other team, she remembered what Kanata told her before the match. She then started thinking of the time she spent living with Lekti and Rico, and finally realized that all she had to do from the start was to trust and depend on them. She then charged up her cannon and fired a powerful strike blaster, completely knocking the other team out. When they were declared the winners, the girls hugged each other as they celebrated their first ever win. Meanwhile, Rio was getting completely brainwashed by the Chimera and injected himself with some drugs. The girls then went on to win every other match and advanced to the finals, much to the displeasure of Frian, who prayed for them to lose. So to ensure that Kanata wouldn't back out of the deal he made with her, Frian published in the papers that if the E600 and one team lost the tournament, they would be disbanded. The night before the finals, Lekti, Rico, and Mysora coincidentally ended up in the training field after each of them reminisced about how much their lives had changed after they met Kanata. On the day of the match, Lloyd and Chloe patrolled the area in case Rio showed up and decided to cause trouble. When the E600 and one team entered the arena, they were surprised by how big the crowd was and the live cameras present. However, the crowd wasn't too pleased to see them because they were part of Kanata's team. Mysora pointed out that all the banners in the arena had the name of the other team, but Lekti managed to spot the E571 team cheering for them. When Yuri and her team entered the arena, the crowd went wild and cheered for them loudly. Before the match began, Yuri and Kanata went to sit in the stands, and Yuri advised him to run away so he didn't have to suffer the humiliation of his team's defeat. Kanata assured her that by the end of the match, she would eat her words because she would join his team after they won. The match began, and the E227 team opened fire on Mysora and the others, leaving them with no other choice but to evade their attacks. Lekti went toe-to-toe with one of them, but her teammate fired his arrows at her. Lekti deflected them, but was about to be taken down by the girl when Rico shot at her, allowing Lekti to escape. The girl went after her, while Mysora did her best to avoid getting hit by enemy fire. Outside the arena, Chloe wished she could watch the match, but Lloyd called her on the radio and asked her to check the back gate because the team station there wasn't responding. Back inside the arena, Mysora kept flying around, much to the annoyance of her opponents and the audience. The audience was starting to get tired of watching them play tag, and Yuri took the chance to tell Kanata that she could see through his plans. She told him that because she was once on the same team with him, she knew how he thought, which was why she had prepared her team to counter all his moves. However, Kanata said nothing as he kept his eyes on the match before him, so Yuri called out to her team, asking them to end things. Mysora charged at the leader of the E227 team, but she managed to dodge her attacks, and when she tried to use her strike blaster, the girl closed the distance between them. Yuri told Kanata that she had already anticipated the move, so it would be easy for her team to counter it. Just then, the team leader for E227 realized that even though she could counter the strike blast, it would take out her team. So she ordered them to do evasive maneuvers, but soon discovered that Mysora had fooled them. Annoyed, she chased after her, and that was when Kanata told Yuri that she had lost the match. Mysora lured the girl to the top of the arena and prepared to fire her strike blast, but the girl believed she was trying to fool her again, so she didn't signal her team to move out of the way. Seeing that they had fallen for her trap, Mysora fired the strike blaster and took them out, surprising everyone. The commentator was about to announce the winner when Real knocked her out and activated the air raid alerts, which caused the audience to flee in panic. He then blew up the control room and descended into the arena as he declared his love for Yuri. As he approached Yuri, Misor realized that the aura he was giving off was the same as the power Kanata had used to defeat the Chimera. He then tried to attack Yuri, but Kanata got between them and kicked him before dragging Yuri away. Real went after them, and the two began fighting, but he managed to injure Kanata's leg. He then noticed Yuri trying to escape, so he went after her and broke her sword when she tried to attack him. As she stood defenseless before him, he tried to attack her again, but got hit by the shot Misor sent his way. Kanata asked the girls why they were still in the arena, and Lekti told him that he needed help to fight Real, but he told her that he had friends who would help him. Real got back up and told them not to get in the way of his love, but Chloe and Lloyd arrived just then and fired shots at him. Kanata told him that if he surrendered they wouldn't off him, but Real laughed at him and transformed into an ugly-ass humanoid beetle. He claimed that he had been chosen by the devil beetles and that they could not possibly hope to defeat him. He then created a small whirlwind which covered Chloe and Lloyd's view of him and Yuri along with Kanata and the E-601 team, so they fired shots at it, but the shots had no effect. Inside the enclosure, Real grabbed Yuri with his tentacle arm and told her it was time for them to develop plot. Before he could do anything, Misora fired shots at him, which annoyed him, so he shot them down. Kanata got angry that he hurt the girls, so he charged up using the power he used against the Chimera. Mesora recognized it immediately, but Rico and Lekti seemed lost as to what was going on. Kanata then used his sword to send a wind strike towards Real, but he blocked it and only got a scratch on his cheek. Real recognized the power and said that just like him, Kanata had been chosen by the Beatles. However, Kanata told him that he was a fool for listening to the voices in his head, which led to his corruption. His words made Real understand that the reason Kanata avoided going on missions was that he didn't want people to find out about his power. Kanata told him to shut up and tried to attack him, but Real blocked the attack, so he tried to stab him with his small knife. Real produced another arm and caught the knife before using another arm to pull Kanata's other hand away from him. He stretched Kanata until he let go of the weapon in his right hand and tried to end him, but Kanata told him not to underestimate his students. The next moment, one of the girls shot at him, and Lekti used the chance to get close enough and cut Kanata down before Rico fired another shot to free Yuri. Real regenerated his arms, turning one into a weapon, and tried to attack Yuri, who was trying to get away. However, Kanata decided to trust in his ironclad plot armor, so he got between Yuri and the blade and got stabbed. Real laughed and thanked him for killing himself, but Kanata managed to speak and told Yuri to stay back. Real was impressed that he managed to talk despite having been inducted into the donut gang like Ace, and said he would put him out of his misery. Yuri watched helplessly, but Mysore told her not to lose hope, because Kanata had taught them all well, making Yuri remember Kanata, telling her to never give up, so as Real tried to stab Kanata again. Rico and Mizora shot at him. He tried to attack them, but the girls worked together to give Lekti the chance to stab him in the shoulder. Unfortunately, her blade broke off, so Rico asked her to back up while they shot at him again. From where he lay bleeding on the ground, Kanata was glad that Real viewed the girls as weak, because that way he would be more reckless with his attacks. Real then sprouted wings and flew towards the girls, but he soon noticed that Yuri was nowhere to be found. He promised to go easy on the girls if they told him where Yuri was, but they said nothing. The moment he got closer, they gave way for Yuri to attack him with her spear, but Real laughed, saying her attack was useless. What he didn't expect was for the spear to heat up and start cooking him from the inside, so Yuri explained that the spear was specially designed to counter chimeras. Real fell to the ground, and when he emerged from the hole his body created, his face had returned to that of a human. He then tried to reason with Yuri as he looked around, but she told him not to try anything stupid and said that she would never forgive him for what he had done. He started sobbing but changed his face back to the beetle and charged at Kanata. Yuri threw her spear, and it passed through his body, so by the time he got the Kanata, he was already weak. Kanata told him that he'd been dancing on the palm of his hand the entire time, and Real screamed in agony before falling to the ground. With everything over, Chloe asked Kanata how his injuries were, and he told her they were fine while covering it with his hand because it had already healed. Just then, they saw Freon approaching with a team, so Kanata bid his friends farewell and ran off, but the girls went after him. Lloyd laughed at his behavior and said he'd never change. But after seeing the confused look on Yuri's face, Chloe explained that Kanata never took credit for the things he did. Sometime later, Kanata informed the girls that Frieren refused to raise their ranks to C rank as the reward for winning the tournament because of the damage they caused to the city during the raid. They then asked if they would still get the weapons they were promised, so he showed them a destroyed scrap of metal, saying that during the explosions in the arena, the weapons got hit. The girls felt sad, so Kanata told them that even though they got nothing for winning, they had performed very well, which seemed to lift their spirits. He then informed them of a new teammate, who turned out to be Yuri, because she had lost the bet she made with Kanata. When she came in, Kanata noticed the cake box in her hand and took it from her. But Yuri tried to take it back because she was embarrassed by the words written on it. When they opened the cake, they saw the words "I love you" written on it. But the slow-brained idiot didn't realize she was trying to confess her feelings to him, and assumed she was trying to confess to one of the girls. So Yuri ran away in embarrassment. If you've gotten this far and liked the video, let us know by commenting "Rip Real." Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. See you guys in the next video.